So Suresh sir is industry stalwart who needs no introduction at all. We all know him. We all have read about him. We have heard about him. He's an alum of the London Business School, and he has over more than 3 decades, almost 40 years of experience of leading the FMCG industry. Currently, he is the MD and the CEO of Nestle. He's worked with Colgate before that, and he started his career as a management training in HUL. Now, we all know that Sir has held senior management and top leadership roles, across global companies. He is not new to volatility and upheaval. He's faced it before during his stint at Nestle Egypt also, and during the Maggi crisis, which he will be talking about today. Lastly, but not the least, Suresh sir has been recognized as the most valuable CEO in FMCG for 2 years consecutively, and he is known to be a leader who leads from the heart with compassion and ethics. I think that's the one thing we need to remember, and we would love to hear about him and as he goes on to. So over to you, floor is yours.
Thank you, Bhavna, and good evening, dear students of IIM Ahmedabad. I think it's a privilege and honor for me to yet again have this opportunity to talk to you. I would have loved to have it in person. I've addressed some of your senior PGPX students a few years ago, when I had actually come for almost 2.5 to 3 hour session, and that is available on YouTube, and that was probably one of the longest engagements that I had in terms of speaking and sharing at an educational institution, and I was delighted to have gone through that experience. So I was hoping that we would have that opportunity in the month of January, but unfortunately, we're talking today about crises. The crises that we have been through and that we are still going through is, gigaton times bigger than what I'm talking to you about. But nevertheless, it brings with it a certain uncertainty, and brings home the truth once again that man proposes and God disposes. So therefore, this was yet again an example where I was planning to come and talk to all of you in person, but that was not to be. So we will make the best that we can in a virtual format. When I was thinking of what topics can we talk about, I thought to myself that here are a group of reasonably fresh managers and entrepreneurs with some experience. But all of you uniformly are those for whom the best part of your lives are still ahead of you, as professionals, as executives, as entrepreneurs, in whatever capacity that you're working at. And therefore, it is a little bit presumptuous of me to come and talk to you about things that are covered very well in your institution. So, at IIM Ahmedabad, you have the best professors on strategy, on operations, on marketing, on environment, communication, you name it. You have the who's who to come and talk to you. So it is little presumptuous for me to come and talk about things like business strategies, or indeed talk about the state of the industry, etc., because you have enough information on that and you have enough expertise coming on that. So what would this be serve as a useful platform for? And I thought that it probably will be useful for you to reflect and to take some perspectives on what it means to be dealing with difficult situations in life, whether it is a business context, it's a personal context, it's an environmental context, or indeed any context that you are going through. And if there is one, and probably the only benefit of my having spent 40 years in the corporate world, is fundamentally to be able to share with you certain perspectives on what it takes and what it means to be part of an unprecedented, a difficult, I dare say, a almost life-threatening situation of a crisis, life-threatening for a company, not for an individual, that one has to face. And one of the things, my young friends, and all of you are those, I believe, with anywhere between 4 years to 20 years of experience, and some of you are PGPX students, some of you are doing the regular PGP program. Some of you, I believe, are also alumnus of the great institution that you belong to. One of the truths that you'll agree with me is that crisis doesn't come with a calling card. Crisis never comes and knocks at your door and say, here, I am Mr. Crisis. What are you going to do about me? It comes in, it creeps in, it soaks in, it surreptitiously makes its way into your life. And you have to take care of it. Something starts small and it can become big, it can become bigger, it can become even bigger. And if not attended to, it can consume you. So one of the crises that I'm going to talk about is that I have faced in my own career is the whole Maggi saga. And this happened almost 7 years ago. 2015 is when it happened. And this was something that me and my team had to go through in the environment. What I will be talking about today to you are not details of the crisis, because that's all in the literature. I think there is enough material that has been written. I'm told that even at IIMA you have got a few case studies that get covered on both the marketing aspects and of course on the crisis management communication aspects. I know that Professor Kaul, who teaches communications at IIMA, had got me to do a session for students at IIMA on the whole Maggi crisis and the whole saga of communication and posturing and how as a company we managed to do whatever we did. This is more a personal reflection of the leadership journey and of the strategic imperatives that come to us as leaders when you are put in a tight spot or in a hot spot. And that's really what I'll talk to you about. Next slide, please. So one of the things, and I'm talking to you about, is a brand that, one thing I can confidently say is that more than 90% of those on the call here would be those who are consumers of Maggi, who love the brand, who love the association. It has had such pleasant memories in the lives of so many millions. And probably it is a brand that has touched the life of many people across generations. And indeed, today continues to be strong and continues to be relevant, continues to be resonant, and continues to be a loved brand for many million people in this country. In fact, till the Maggi crisis happened, if you ask someone who owned the brand Maggi, the answer would not have been Nestle. They would have said it is our brand. It is a national brand. It is something that is very much to do with this country, and indeed it is, because your friends, my friends, our colleagues, our relatives, our friends who go to different parts of the world still carry the Maggi noodles with them, because in a cold evening, if you're stuck and you don't want to tuck into any of the so-called alien foods that we have to eat when we go overseas, what better than a bowl of hot piping Maggi noodles? And I think that's really what is the nature of the relationship. But one of the things about great brands, indeed about great people, and this was said by Nelson Mandela many years ago, that it is human to fall, but it takes courage to dust yourself and rise again. And I think that is a characteristic of great people and of great brands, that winners never quit. The fact of the matter is, all of us go through adversity, my friends. Many of you on the call during this last 2.5, 3 years would have gone through a lot of adversity. Personal sickness, personal loss, family loss amongst friends. The sadness in the community. Opening your newspapers or linking up on your websites to just see death and destruction. How many deaths, how many cases, how many positives, what is the fatality rates? I mean, this is what has consumed us during this period. But one of the things that make up your own spirit as a leader is that you won't quit. If you're strong enough, you won't quit this world. You will not quit the cause that you're pursuing. You will not quit the profession that you're in, and you will try to come out of this stronger than when you went in. And that's indeed what happens to great brands. Next slide, please. So the year is 1983. 1983, I can safely say that none of you on the call were born, probably. Maybe some faculty member, if he's there, could be the person who would have been born during that period and probably had early childhood during that period. But it is safe to say that none of you who are studying today would have been born at this particular time. In fact, it is around this time I was already working. So therefore, I have the privilege of seeing the way in which the brand evolved. But 1983 was important for two reasons. And next slide. One, of course, was the World Cup. And all of you know this. And I think there's a movie which is now emblematic of the kind of victory that we had. And the shot of Kapil Dev with the World Cup. It defined the place for India in the cricketing world. And I think the beating of the West Indies team at the House of Lords was a defining moment in the psyche of this country. That we are not underdogs. We are not fellows who have to follow. We are not fellows who have to plead. We are the fellows who have to lead. And I think we went in as underdogs and came out as champions. And that was an important pivotal moment for the country to gain its confidence on the world mantle. We were always a large country. We continue to be the world's biggest democracy. The fact of the matter is that we didn't have that hunar, as they call it. We didn't have that stature in the sporting arena, at least at this particular time. So this defined the whole moment in 1983. At about the same time, a company called Food Specialities then in 1983 did something very strange. And the strangeness was that it researched and found that there is an opportunity for instant noodles in this country. And that was strange because this is a paratha eating country, this is a roti eating country, this is a puri eating country. 1983, there were barely many restaurants. Eating out was not a habit. We didn't have Zomato and Swiggy and all these food aggregators. We had none of that. You could not order. You barely had a telephone at home. So there's the question of ordering it and getting it from restaurants. Restaurants said, you come and eat here. We're not going to be delivering it to you at home. And here was a company that was deciding to go in to a category which was basically, noodles were prepared in particular parts of the country. If you are from Calcutta, there is a place called Tangara, which is where the Chinese origin people stay. And that's where noodles were prepared and served to people. And people who loved that taste, they stuck to that taste. But what really the company saw as an opportunity at that time was the fact that there were a few essential elements that moms were looking for. And those of you who are moms, or those of you who have seen your moms at that particular point of time when you were kids, will realize that possibly the most harrowing moment for a mother is when the kids come back from school. And in the 80s, when kids came back from school, the fact of the matter is that they were ravenously hungry. They were ravenously hungry because they'd eaten their lunch, had their breakfast, they'd eaten their lunch, and they did their sport, and they came back. And those were not the days when you had, Xbox, and you didn't have video games, and you didn't have any of those things. You had to go out and play, right? My childhood was going out and playing. Didn't have the benefit of any of these things. All of us, many of us, didn't even have televisions at home. And even if you had television, you had Doordarshan and Krishi Darshan. So what were you meant to watch anyway at that particular point in time? So the mother's stress was on a product that was convenient, that was customizable. She was able to get across what she wanted to get across to the kid, which is vegetables and proteins and stuff like that. And that was tasty, and that could be made in a very convenient format. And that was Maggi noodles. And that was Maggi noodles. And hence, this is what it was. It was convenient and customizable, tasty, light, but filling. And this was the moment that mothers were looking for, because every day otherwise was quite a chore in terms of preparing different dishes. The mothers used to lovingly make it, of course, parathas or puris or kachoris or whatever, or upma or poha or whatever they were making for the kids. But here was something that was customizable. You could add vegetables, you could add paneer to it, you could add egg to it, you could add whatever you wanted to do with it. It was tasty, the delicious taste of the masala, and of course that it provided a quick energy for the kid before the child went rushing out to play. And for a touch of nostalgia, let me play here the original commercial for Maggi turmeric noodles. So can you just play that commercial?
बच्चे जब भी भूखे लौटते हैं तो मैं उन्हें मैगी देना पसंद करती हूँ। लेकिन मैगी क्यों? स्वादिष्ट मैगी को गरम गरम और ताजे बनाकर मैं झटपट अपने बच्चों की भूख मिटा सकती हूँ और इनमें सब्जी वगैरह भी कितनी आसानी से मिल सकती हैं। इतने सारे मैगी क्यों? मैगी मैगी मैगी। मम्मी भूख लगी है। 2 मिनट, अब समझ में आया क्यों? स्कूल से आते धूम मचाते एक ही बात है दोहराते, मैं गरम गरम और प्यार भरे खाए जब भी भूख लगे।
My apologies, young friends. You know, at 5:15 in the evening, showing you a Maggi commercial is not the best thing to help you, quell your pangs of hunger. But nevertheless, this was the first commercial that went on air, and you can recognize that the lilting jingle of Maggi remains the same. You know, the brand is going to turn 40, but it remains the same, and it has remained the same, and that's a property that we will never part with. Because that is the character, that is the spirit of this brand, that jingle that you get across, and that's the signature in your mind that when you hear that, you cue the brand Maggi. So this was the brand, and what happened to it? Let me the next slide, please. So the brand initially, of course, it took time, right? Food is difficult to crack, my young friends. Food is not easy to crack because this is something that you put inside your mouth and it goes into your stomach. This is not a soap or a shampoo or a toothpaste or something that is having a perfunctory kind of interaction with your body. It doesn't go into your alimentary canal. But it started and it got off to a great start. It moved 7 times in 8 years. And I'm very proud to say that Maggi is the start of the food retailing revolution in out of home in this country. Before the KFCs and before the McDonald's of the world and before all these other fancy restaurants came up, it was Maggi that was being served. And a number of many million people in this country made a living out of selling Maggi. So those of you in Ahmedabad know that the Law Garden, for example, had number of shops. I don't know whether today it has or not, but it used to have number of shops that used to have Maggi noodles being served, and people used to go there and eat the Maggi. There is still a famous shop in Ahmedabad that sells Maggi pakoras, which is gone in, I'm told, in less than 2 hours. It's gone. I mean, whatever he makes, he sells, and he has been doing that for the last 30 years. And is people are just passionate about it. This Thelawala that you see here is also one such example of a man who was earning an honest day's income by putting together Maggi noodles and serving it to people, to kids, or to young people coming for a snack or whatever. And that's how this brand became ubiquitous. So whether you go from Kashmir or you go to Kanyakumari, you go to Meghalaya, you go to the remotest part of this country, you will always find 2 things in this country: chai and Maggi noodles. This you'll find. So you want to go to Zojila Pass, you'll find it there. You want to go to the highest pass, Khardungla in Ladakh, you'll find it there. You go to Nathula Pass, you'll find it there. And in all the spots, this brand is available, and it became, in a sense, the signature and the choice of generations. You know, there are people who have stories on Maggi. I'm sure all of you have it as well. You have moments of your life which have been defined by this. Many of you, all of you, study hard for your exams. There's nothing more energizing than having a bowl of Maggi noodles along with a cup of Nescafe or whatever you have in the late night as a midnight snack. So obviously the brand grew. The brand grew in stature. It became the most trusted food brand. It became the second largest FMCG brand. And it became, by all counts, the most powerful brand because of the nature of the relationship that it had with the consumers. Consumers loved it. Consumers loved the customization. They loved the taste. They loved the convenience. They loved the fact that whether you were a cook or not a cook, I mean, there are people who very proudly say that they started their culinary journey making good Maggi noodles. There is a famous restaurant in Bangkok run by a world-class chef called Gagan Anand. And Gagan Anand says quite openly, he says, I started my culinary journey by successfully making Maggi noodles. And there are many today who unashamedly say that Maggi noodles was the one that in fact broke the so-called requirement. It is no longer a requirement, but in the 70s and 80s, for a girl to get married, one of the requirements was that she should be able to cook something. So capability in cooking Maggi was considered good enough, saying, fine, at least you're able to keep body and soul together. So that's how the brand built so much of relationships and so many things that happen. But like everything else in life, my young friends, crisis doesn't come with a calling card. As human beings, many of us rise in our stature, rise in our profession, we become big, we become famous, we are well known for something. And then suddenly you get a heart attack. You get a heart attack one day, and that heart attack kind of defines who you are and what will become of you. Will you recover from it? Will you come back from it? Or will it leave you depleted? Or will it leave you dead? Is the story of all our lives. We will all go through crisis in some form or the other someday, but that's the way in which divine providence defines it for us. All of us won't have happiness all the time. We'll have happiness and sadness. You know, we always say khatta meetha in life. This is that khatta meetha in life. The start of the crisis for Maggi was an innocuous test that was done by a food inspector in a place called Barabanki in UP, who accused the company of misbranding, because one of the things that the company does is it declares and says whatever it adds to a product and doesn't add to a product is declared on the pack. So one of the things, can you just go back, please? One of the things that was important here was that we don't add MSG to our product. There is no monosodium glutamate in our product, which is basically it's an additive. It's a flavor enhancer. But sodium glutamate comes in the form of onions and spices. Onions, spices all contain sodium glutamate. And that's not a flavor enhancer of sorts. It is part of the composition of this. So when you declare no added MSG, means that you don't add MSG, but you have sodium glutamate that comes in from the spices and from the onions that you put there. And that was incidentally well in line with the guidelines of the FSSAI at that point in time. So obviously he took it as an infraction of a mislabeling and preferred to put a case on the company. Send the sample for analysis to Calcutta, second sample, as it is called. It went to Calcutta via Simla for some strange reason, but sometimes it happens. It went there and it got analyzed in the food laboratory in Calcutta. And the results came out that actually it contains many times the quotient of lead that it should be having. So it went for misbranding and for no added MSG and landed up with lead. Typically, when such tests happen, the protocol of the day is that the company is first approached, saying, "Look, there is a failure of your particular product. Do you have anything to say? Do you want to test it again, or are you admitting to the guilt? In which case there will be a fine and whatever else that the government will choose to do." In this particular case, unfortunately, the report, it was decided it would go to the media. So it went to a couple of newspapers and a couple of television channels. And that was the start of the crisis. So where was Maggi when this crisis hit us? It was a $500 million brand. It's quite a significant brand. It was iconic, ubiquitous. It was a huge love mark. It was a fourth of Nestle India. So it was a significant contributor to our turnover. It was an order opener. In fact, the most distributed brand of the company was Maggi noodles. It was the best known in the trade. It is not our largest brand. We got other brands that are bigger, but the best known in the trade was Maggi noodles. And of course, even in the public perception, Maggi. Though we got brands like Maggi, Nescafe, Kit Kat, Munch, Milkmaid, and Everyday, and various other brands, but yet it was Maggi that was the kind of the apple of every consumer's eye. This is the brand that was the most visible to people. Next slide. We had 5 factories that were devoted. Today in India, we have 9 factories. At that time, we had 8 factories when the crisis happened. And 5 out of the 8 factories actually had about 5,000 people directly employed in the manufacture of Maggi. So there was a fair amount of industrial footprint behind the brand. Next slide, the next point. We were amongst the top 3 procurers of wheat in this country, as we needed it for so many of our brands. And of course, Maggi was the biggest user of wheat flour. More than 1,500 distributors, more than 4 million retailers, thousands of vendors. You know, the challenge in managing a crisis in a consumer good brand, and especially a large consumer good brand, is that the ecosystem is much bigger than the brand itself in terms of the value to the company. Because this is supporting 4 million retailers, and there are some retailers. I remember when I first came back from Philippines in this crisis and was visiting the market, I made the mistake of asking a retailer. I said, "Seth ji, dhanda kaise hai?" He said, "Aap kaise pooch rahe ho ye? I used to sell 2,000 rupees worth of Maggi noodles per day, and now it is 0. So how are you asking me how the business is?" So you can see the involvement of the business chain. It was important for the distributors, important for the retailers, important for the vendors. So suddenly, out of the blue, all the vendors who were serving and selling Maggi noodles went from selling, you know, maybe a couple of hundred rupees, couple of thousand rupees to 0 in a overnight. And of course, wheat farmers, because it's a large buyer of wheat in this country, wheat flour especially, and therefore the Maggi noodles footprint, to put it in a short manner, is much bigger than the Maggi noodles brand. So therefore, while I took a hit in my 2015 results of almost 500 crores, the loss in the ecosystem was many times more, many times more, because that is the size of the brand. So what really happened? Let me just show you 2 videos, and you might have seen it before, but it gives you a little bit of what really happened. Okay, just play the video, please.
मैं देश की राजधानी दिल्ली में हूं। यहां की मसरूफियत में मैगी लोगों के ब्रेकफास्ट, डिनर और लंच का हिस्सा हुआ करती थी, लेकिन अब ये लोगों की प्लेट से गायब है।
हम लोगों ने बिल्कुल अवॉइड कर दिया है।
मैगी की सेल जो है 50% कम हो गई है।
मैगी जो कि 2 मिनटों में बनती है, तमाम ऐसे पैकेट्स है जो कि दुकान में कुछ इसी तरह से नजर आते हैं। बिक्री इसकी कम हो चुकी है।
डर बैठ गया कि नहीं अब खाना ही नहीं है मैगी को। जब से पता चला मैगी में क्या क्या है, थोड़ा खाना बंद कर दिया मैगी।
जिस दिन से पता चला है तब से मैगी की बिक्री तो जरूर कम हो गई है।
ये तस्वीरें आगरा की हैं। देखिए, मैगी के पैकेट जलाकर लोग विरोध जता रहे हैं, जो बताने को काफी है कि कल तक मैगी का जो जायका सभी को भाता था, आज वही मैगी लोगों को डरा रही है।
So you see what can happen. A brand from a ubiquitous, from a top position suddenly gets completely trashed. Not only gets trashed, but also in the media, it becomes, this is a time of a perfect storm. The perfect storm was nothing else was happening in the country at that time. There was no GST, there was no demonetization, there was no, there was no pandemic, there was nothing. This was the biggest news. So it captured, though the brand itself is relatively modest, $500 million brand is not India's biggest brand. It's one of the middling brands in this country. But yet it became the cynosure and the focus of attention of all the leading agents in the media world as well. And of course, as you know, there is a person who wants the whole nation to know, and maybe you can see what he had to say. So the next slide, please.
Will you just consider one simple fact, gentlemen, before you come into the debate, Ashok Pandit? Just consider this, that for 30 years, if there is more lead than is required or than is allowed, then for 30 years, how many generations of Indian children and Indian families have been fed lead? And Ashok Pandit, just consider this.
But what is
how have we
allowed 30 years of Maggi to be on the shelf?
What is shocking? What is shocking is the attitude of the company. That's a separate issue. Ashok Pandit, a minute. My question to you, Ashok Pandit, calm down, Ashok Pandit. 1 second. My question is very simple, Mr. Pandit. If tomorrow, in some distant part of Pennsylvania or Cleveland or Ohio or Arkansas or even Alaska for that matter, in any small American village, one packet of Maggi was found to have 1% more lead.
It would have
1 second. Would there be even a debate over it? The company would be taken to the cleaners.
No, but we are not.
And if the same company would...
Okay, so you see that. You see the burning deck out there, everything burning. The two ladies who were there on that panel were probably some of the India's top nutritionists who were not given a minute to speak. And this is how a crisis drums up. This is how it builds up. This is how it becomes a full-blown spectacle as far as the country is concerned. And yes, it is always nice to trash someone without evidence, but that's really what happens when such a crisis hits, that you are guilty without even being given an opportunity. When this happens, obviously for a company where it is 25% of your turnover, it is almost near death. So we were a company that had 98% trust in the brand, a brand volume of roughly 15,000 tons at that time. It collapsed, completely collapsed. Just press the slide, please. That was it. That was it. That's what you're left with. Can you imagine this demonstrating itself in an organization? So this is the time when I was requested to come back from the Philippines to come and lead the Indian team. So it is a existential crisis. It's not a crisis that is relegated to a part of the business. It is to a significant part of the business. And my company, which has been in India now, Nestle has been in this country for almost 110 years now. 1912 we came, actually we'll be completing 110 years. It's a company which is a career company for many. Spending 25, 30 years is no big deal in this company. Every year when I go to Moga, unfortunately I haven't been able to go for the last 2 years, there are at least 25 to 30 people who get 35-year awards from me. And they have served their entire lives in this company. Now you will probably smile at it, you'll probably laugh at it, because that's a vanishing generation. Yes, I do admit it's a vanishing generation, but it's a generation of people who are humble and yet very proud of the culture that has made the company what it is today. And suddenly when this happens, you get totally shaken. So what are a few of the strategic imperatives that become important as you go forward? I think the most important is creating a strategic compulsion. What do you do? What is a leader's task there? He doesn't have all the answers, but he knows that he has to ask the right questions, because it is a very difficult context. It's a very difficult context because it is a regulatory issue, it is an environmental issue, it is a consumer issue. And it is like the favorite uncle in the house being accused of being a thief. It can break up the whole family. And the first attention is really to the consumer. But again, I just want to add that I think the strength of an organization comes from the purpose and values that it enshrines. And one of the things that gave me a lot of strength at that point in time as a leader was the fact that we had done nothing wrong. The testing of lead is one of the most complicated tests you can have in food science. Starting from the sampling to the reagents, the nitric acid that is used is a very high grade nitric acid costing 12,000 rupees a liter, not the simple reagent that you use in a laboratory. The crucible that you use for digesting the noodle cake is also specifically made so that it doesn't impart metal contaminants into the product. And the whole testing methodology needs a lot of training and sophistication in the National Accreditation Bureau of Laboratories, the NABL certified laboratories. If you do this test in any simple laboratory, you'll end up with a result that is quite horrendous. This was a point that was being reiterated, saying you can't do this test in any place and just come up with some result and then put it out into the public space. So really, a lot of the task at that point in time was to devise a strategy to contain the fire that was happening as far as the environment is concerned. We preferred this matter to court. We took it to the Bombay High Court, which I think sometimes it is good fortune of a company that Justice Kanade and Kolabawala, two distinguished judges of the Bombay High Court, they tried this matter for every single day for 3 months in a row in order to come to the conclusion that there was a miscarriage of natural justice, that a company has to be given an opportunity to establish itself through tests that will be done at accredited laboratories, which they will choose across the country. And if they come clean, then they will be allowed to relaunch this product. That is the principle of natural justice. You have to give an opportunity to an accused to be able to redeem themselves. But the task was with the consumer, and suddenly 25% of the business goes. And incidentally, consumers like you, and at the time when this whole crisis was happening, numerous consumers like you and other consumers were contacting the company saying, we know nothing is wrong. We missed this brand. Get it back to us, because we know that there is nothing wrong with it. But somehow you guys are being taken to the cleaners. But bring the brand back. And therefore, we had a whole series of campaigns called We Love You Too, because consumers said, we love Maggi, and we said, we love you too, because you are the consumers who made the brand the way it is. Click next, please. The customers. Remember that we were selling this in 4 million outlets. The largest logistic return of stocks in the history of consumer goods in independent India was probably executed by Nestle. We took back every pack from over 4 million outlets across this country. The reverse logistics that was done was enormous, was just simply enormous. But this is where the culture of the company counts. This is where the professionalism, the ethics, the respect, and the dignity of the organization counts. This is where many of our distributors turned around and said, sir, we don't want to present the bill to the company because we have earned from this company and we have fed our families and fed numerous families. But we said, no, every rupee of yours will be redeemed to you because this is not your fault. This is not why, this is not because of anything to do with you. But it was the most massive reverse logistics that was done with the customer. Next click. Remember that this was a brand leader by far. So there was a force of competitive intensity. And obviously sometimes competitors try and play games in order to score when the leading player walks away or is made to walk away. So we had to combat that. And remember that in a competitive market, if Maggi name is tarnished, Nestle name is tarnished. If Nestle name is tarnished, all the brands associated with Nestle also gets tarnished. So the sales of Milkmaid, the sales of Nescafe, the sales of Kit Kat, the sales of Munch, everything started to shake. So the company, in a sense, started to implode unless we pulled itself out of it. So over a period of time, if you were not able to pull the company out of this difficult situation, you would have had to shut shop as a company because there was no other option. You would not have been able to sustain the cost structure of the company. You also had to keep your people going at this time. 4,500 workers were suddenly out of a vacation at the factories. They had nothing to produce. But yet we ensured that every job in this company was maintained and kept. Every job. We paid them, we redirected them in terms of training, in terms of skill building, in terms of maintenance, in terms of doing whatever they could do for a period of 4 to 5 months till we started the activities once again. This was a time when I was spending more time as a leader with the people. I was an elder brother to some. I was like a father to some. I was like a brother to some. Because people suddenly started to feel that, oh my God, am I losing my job? Am I going to be losing a livelihood that feeds my family? It's exactly the same crisis that people have gone through during the pandemic, when millions of people have lost their jobs. Suddenly, from one day to providing food on the table and good food on the table to your wife and your children, you are reaching a situation where you have to beg, where you have to do something, where you have to sell vegetables or eggs or do whatever in order to keep your family going. And for a company where the corporate pride is very high on quality and standards, because it is one thing about Nestle you ought to know, it is that you may not like our advertising, you may not like our pack graphics, those are all issues that you can debate. What you cannot question this company on is the quality of its food safety and integrity of its products. That is what defines the Nestle spirit. The Nestle ethos is that. Our factories are built to global standards. Our processes are global. There's nothing called local. It is all global. Every element of our factory, all the 9 factories, and one is close to you now in Sanand in Gujarat, which has incidentally more than 60% women employees. It is led by global standards. And that's what gives the pride to the people as well, that they know that what they're doing is the right thing for the consumer. And when they are told that you are actually a thief, it creates a lot of emotional issues and a lot of existential issues for people. So these were the 4 vectors. Click the next button. And between the people and between the consumers, between the customers, we have to evaluate what is the knowing doing gap. What is it that we know as a company and what is it that we are doing as a company? This is the opportunity in a crisis to really look at what are the things that we do well and what are the things that we don't do well, and what is the knowing doing gap. Next click. Is the organization prepared? A crisis for me is the best and the biggest opportunity. You never called upon this. You never made this to be you didn't engineer this, but at the same time, if you are able to whip this up into a storm for the future, in terms of calibrating the practices that you need to do, that you're doing, the areas of business that you need to be in, the level of innovation that you need to press, the process, the empowerment, the engagement, the coaching, the talent, every part of the organization is put into scrutiny and test. Exactly what has happened today, post-pandemic, that companies have to recalibrate their strengths. Agility has today become a word. Adaptability has become a word. Anticipation has become a word. And it has become an active word. It is not just having it as part of strategy. Next, how do you know success from failure? I think the important question for us is, as we came out of this crisis, and as we saw ourselves, and this is the only example, ladies and gentlemen, in the consumer goods industry in recent times I can think of a brand that was clinically dead for 4 months, that came back to market leadership within 3 months and continues to be a leader ever since. Today, the tribute is that we have put up a 9th factory and the 6th large factory for Maggi in this country. And that tells you the resilience of the brand and the way in which we've been able to come back. And therefore, to create a momentum, in people and structure. 80% of Nestle India are millennials. They are your generation, or Generation Z actually, which also you represent. This is the advantage, and this is the challenge that a company can create. It can create that momentum coming out of a crisis to ensure that its strategies, its adaptabilities, its agilities, its structures, its people engagement, all of this really makes it a contemporary organization. I know all of you have opportunities of startups and doing your own things. So those are compelling. I'm not saying that they are not compelling. But for a large company to have a small family idea is really what I'm trying to do at Nestle. To get the large giant to be thinking small, to be thinking in modules, to be thinking on victories that it can do every day for 365 days. That's the way in which the strength of the company is built. But all this circumscribed, of course, by the culture of the organization. And that is something, my young friends, I really would like to leave with you as a takeaway. Whether you run your own company or whether you are part of an organization, when you're choosing your jobs, choose an organization that is synchronous with its purpose and values to yours. Choose an organization where the culture meets your values. And I think that is the pride of the Nestle organization. We have a culture that is unique, that is special, that is like a Nestle family. I'm proud of it. Because that is the culture of honesty, of ethics, of decency, of respect, of diversity. Today, I'm very proud of the fact that in the last 5 years, from 15% employees being women, today we have 25% employees being women. This is not the largest in the industry by no stretch of imagination, but improving it by 2/3, I believe. And last year and the last 2 years, almost 45% of our recruitments have been young women professionals into the organization. If I can make this organization a more inclusive place, a more diverse place. When we put up our factory in Sanand, we said our only goal is to ensure that we have digitally the most smart factory in the Nestle world, the most sustainable, the paperless factory, and also the most diverse factory. And I can tell you our factory is digitally the most digital manufacturing processes is what we use for our manufacturing. Our factories are completely paperless. There's not a shred of paper in that factory except for the statutory returns that we have to keep. It is the most sustainable factory because we are at the maximum level of utilization of green energy to run the factories using biomass facilities that have been customized for us. And finally, 62% of our workforce are women and 86% of them are first-timers who just started their careers. So I believe that organizations can walk the talk when they go through difficult times and come out of it. That is what has inoculated us when we went into this pandemic as well, because we had been through a crisis in a sense that we had been inoculated before in terms of what are the factors that are important. And that's something that has led us to do what we do. So I'm very proud of my team, very proud of my organization. And I think it is important that we keep it that way. Last slide, please. So what are a few lessons that I've taken in my 40 years that could be of some use to you coming out of this crisis as well? There is opportunity in adversity. You've seen that. It doesn't mean that if you have a crisis that you're going to have a closure of shop, but it all depends on the attitude with an A, and the ethos, and the humility, and the culture that your organization has. Next click. Don't be afraid of uncertainties. I think your times in the workplace is going to be full of uncertainties. My time was different. I had a lot of certainty in a lot of things. Maybe it was a slower paced certainty, but it was certainty. Today, you don't know whether organizations, structures, business models, etc. exist. They can be wiped out by just one movement done by a competitor more astutely. Next click. Teamwork and achievement will drive credibility. A lot has been attributed to me as a person for managing this company. I can tell you in all humility, it is my team that is making things happen. I've just been called upon to give the roar, but it is the team that makes it happen. If the team does well, you as a leader get your credibility. The head of a pack of lions cannot be a monkey. It has to be a lion. And that is the way in which I would urge you to look at your lives. It's just a suggestion. It's up to you to face it. This is a very aggressive age. This is a very acquisitive age. This is a very I, me, myself age. If you can bring in a bit of the team to it, the people to it, I think it adds a great flavor to it. Always strive for can do and will try. I always believe that in a crisis, you need to have people who can do rather than the Gantt chart experts who will say will try. And time again, these are the people who make the difference in an organization. People are the center of everything that you do. If there is one under-leveraged, completely sometimes neglected element of corporate structures, it is people. We call it human resources. And I hate that term human resources because it almost sounds like cattle and sheep being herded in to a pen and being called human resources. So I tell my people, our head of human resources is the people man in this company, because you need somebody to look after people, and looking after people is, I think, a big opportunity. And during this pandemic, we have tried to live with compassion and empathy in everything that we do. That has been my most important objective. My objective has not been business success. I'm telling you in all honesty. My objective in this pandemic has been the safety, security, and well-being of my people. Because if that happens, the rest of it falls in place. If this doesn't happen, then I can be having the most brilliant people doing my strategy, but nothing will happen. Volatility, keep a plan B ready. In your lives, keep a plan B ready. If I lose this job, what happens to me next? If I don't succeed in that business, what happens to me next? This is the reality of your lives, my young friends. And this is the reality that you have to live up to. Never lose your winning spirit. I've seen this in crisis after crisis. It's very easy to give up, but managing yourself is more than 50% of a crisis that is being won. If you don't manage yourself, you cannot manage a crisis. And managing yourself and leadership. Look at around you in the pandemic. The best leaders have been those who have been capable of managing themselves and managing the surroundings far better than some other leaders. And that really comes down to your centric purpose in life, your values in life, and your winning spirit, and your tenacity and your capability to come out of difficult situations. Keep your eyes on reality. I think it's important. All of you will rise to great heights, my young friends. The truth is defined by you. Reality is defined by you. People will keep telling you for your own good that this is the reality and you are the reality and you are the creator of the reality. But the reality is what you see. And never forget that, and keep your feet on the ground when you see that. Constantly communicate, not less but more. A leadership job is an exciting job, but it is not a bed of roses. It is not the accolade of sitting in a great big office surrounded by huge amount of people, right? In the plush and comfort of an air-conditioned room, and pretend that you don't have to do anything else. Communication is an essential part, not less but more. And especially during a crisis, you should be able to communicate as many times as possible. Even during the pandemic, I try and communicate as many times. Unfortunately, all of it is through video links, but that's the best that we can do at this time. But I let my people know that I'm around. I'm physically around. I'm emotionally around. I'm around in spirit, because that is important. Whom do your people look up to in a crisis? Not to politicians. They look up to you as a leader. What are you doing in this company? What are you ensuring to make life easier for me? How empathetic are you? How realistic are you? How caring are you? This is what is important, and communication for that is important. Finally, keep to your values. My young friends, values are very easy to morph. But you have come to this world. You have been grown by your parents, by your teachers, influenced by your people around you to live your values. I have lived that for 40 years of my career. And for whatever little time I have left, I hope to live it, because I think that is important. More than any wealth you make, more than anything else that you can think of, I think it is to be rooted, to stay focused, to live your values, to be connected. Ultimately, it is a saga of what you do with your people. And as Larry Bossidy said once at Honeywell, you will never be remembered for the turnover you delivered or the profits made. You will be remembered for how you made the other man feel. That's all that is the legacy of your leadership. To have leaders who are better than you as you depart from the company, and to have pleasant memories in the minds of most people that you interacted with. Because what you remember people by is not by the edifices, you remember them by the characteristics. Listen, stay connected, keep humble. Humility is important for a leader. Unfortunately, humility and hubris are two contradictory terms. Hubris is what we celebrate. Humility we look down upon. If somebody is humble, we say, it's okay, he's nothing. But humility is strength. It gives you access and it allows you to, as Dalai Lama said, listen more than you talk. When you listen, you hear new things. When you talk, you repeat yourself. Stay focused and above all, be human. Thank you all very much, my young friends. I hope this has been of some use to you and I'm happy to take questions from you now. Thank you.